Hi, welcome to the Sundry Book Club. In today's chat, I sit down with author Sonora Jha as we discuss her newest novel, Intemperance. Let's have a look. I'm wondering, can you start by telling us just a little bit about Intemperance for those who've not had the pleasure of reading it yet?
Yeah, and I love to see the copy of Intemperance. And is that a little bit of the laughter as well
Yes.
behind you? Yay, thank you.
Yay. Yeah.
So Intemperance is about an intemperate woman. It was my attempt to sort of take this whole concept of intersectionality and all these identities that we live with and inhabit. Um, and turn it into fiction in a way that's interesting and subversive and fun and satirical and also a gut punch, right? So I wanted to take all those things and do that in one novel. So this is about a 55-year-old woman who decides to have a swayamvar, which is this Indian mythological, Hindu mythology concept of a princess, basically, who, when she is in her prime, the prime of her youth, especially, choosing a suitor, choosing a husband from among a number of princes and men of valor who will perform feats in order to win her hand in marriage. And so she decides to take this and make it her own version and in Seattle and says, I'm going to pick a third husband. And I am very, very marriageable, by the way. And so a lot of people have problems with that and do not agree with her marriageability. And she's a disabled woman. She's twice divorced. She has a son. She is, past her prime, so to speak. And so I wanted to take that and turn it into this journey of self-discovery, of course, but also self-actualization, and also give a sense of community, that when we live unconventional lives and take risks in our personal lives and start a new adventure, people sort of show up and people come and support you or not support you, and what does that entail? What kind of journey does that take you on?
I mean, it's quite a journey. I felt like it was a roller coaster the entire time, and I mean that as the highest compliment. It was wonderful. I wanted to ask you a little bit about what you just said. This character is unnamed, an unnamed protagonist. I appreciate that because then the reader can inject their own vision into that character, their own name, their own person that they know, all of the things. She starts out with a little bit of self-doubt when she embarks on the journey of, okay, I'm going to put this out there. I'm going to be vulnerable. I'm going to, issue feats of strength that men have to meet. And as the book progresses, I think she grows a little bit more confident in her choices, in her decision, and the people that she finds in her community. Can you talk a little bit about the writing journey there, and how did that play out for you? Did you know the ending going in, or did you kind of surprise yourself with that?
Chachi, that's a great and terrifying question,
I
because
know.
the answer to it is that no, I didn't know how it ends. I was discovering the book as I was writing it. And so I had a general idea of the things I wanted to do, but for me, it was terrific as a writer to be on this journey with my protagonist and say, okay, take me to wherever you want to go and surprise me with what you want and how you're going to go about it. And also, it's sort of, in a way, it was reflecting my fear about writing such a book. The fact that she is also fearful about doing such a thing, having this sort of a swayamvar. And also wanted to reflect the fact that no matter how powerful you may be or how much agency you may have as a woman, and as really anyone that's marginalized and is not exalted in our society, you self-doubt creeps up when we want to do something that's uncharted. And that sort of can open us up to ridicule or open us up to further estrangement from family, from society, from respect and regard. I think, especially as South Asian women as well, the thing of, what will people say, log kya kahenge, is so deeply ingrained in us that that taking any kind of risk, I've seen this to be true with my friends and with my community, that a lot of us take risks, but often because we're sort of pushed off the plank in a way, So, so she's taking this risk, and then she begins to have second thoughts, and of course, others don't help initially by giving her all the reasons for not going through with this.
Yeah, I wonder, you mentioned that you were a little bit scared about embarking or pushing off the plank with this book. What was the thing that pushed you off the pier, so to speak,
To to
to
write
to
the
jump
book.
to jump into this journey for writing?
I mean, I think most of the time I'm writing because I can't help it. It was
Mm-hmm.
almost like, okay, let me see if I want to sustain this. I can always, throw it away. I don't have to be committed to any book. In a way, I was, because my editor was waiting for it.
Mm-hmm.
I'd already promised this book. I already had a contract for writing it. So I think what helped me. Keep at it was is that what you asked, or did you say yes, that's what you asked,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, what helped me stay with it was, one, I had a deadline. That's the practical
Sure.
thing. But also the state of wonder, the state of wonder, like, okay, if I write a story like this, of course people are going to read into it as if it is my own life, or my own, some of the circumstances are my own, but not a lot of the things that happen in the book are not from my life. And so am I okay with that? Am I okay with sort of giving my deepest, darkest feelings into the book, giving this woman the interiority that I have, including all aspects of shame, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and also okay with taking leaps into fiction and having people believe that this was me. I feel what keeps me going is this sense of wanting to push past fear for myself, push past fear for my protagonist, push past fear for those who would be reading it and haven't pushed past it themselves, right? So I want
Right.
to be in this sort of conversation of liberation with my readers, and also explore, like, what can a disabled woman do, right? So she's taking more risks as a woman with a disability than I myself, with my internalized ableism, am not able to take. And so for me, that was very freeing on the page. So those kinds of things, when I started to feel the sense of freedom and the sense of liberation for myself, and see that it could be reflected and reflected back to me, that kept me going.
I love that, because what I felt when I was reading it was that the main character had a vision, and everyone else had a different vision of what her life should look like based on whatever they decided was to be. Whether it was her age was preventing her, or her living with a disability, or being twice divorced, and all of these things. And I love that this book eventually gets to her, not that she doesn't care, but that it's freeing, because I think she doesn't let that hold her back. And it sounds like you're describing your writing process a little bit through that as
Yeah,
well.
yeah,
um,
true.
I'm wondering, I don't read a lot of books, or I read a lot of books, sorry, where the female protagonist is in her 50s, highly educated, is, shockingly self-aware. She has her internal monologue is she has a lot of insecurities, as many women do, and things that she thinks about, but she does have this ability to take a step back and look at the bigger picture. And I'm wondering, why was it important for you to center a character like that in this story?
Because so many of us need to see ourselves in it, right? Like, see ourselves in literature. And I think there are a couple of author friends of mine, really dear friends of mine, that said, well, make her younger, because, people don't want to read about aging women. And I was like, is that so? Okay, then I will do this now, and I think it's important. And it's great that we are getting a lot of literature about women in the middle age
Mhm.
and beyond. And yet I heard a woman say, recently, that she kept her, even though she is in her 60s, she kept her protagonist in her 50s because people don't want to read about women in their 60s. And I was like, what is happening? We have to, I mean, this protagonist reflects my age, but I now feel like, oh my goodness, I want to write older and older women characters because I think it's an age of wisdom, right? I mean, apart from the fact that we need to see this in literature, um, so much incredible work has been done about older women in the past, and I feel like contemporary literature is lacking in that, um, or doesn't have enough of it. And so uh, it was important for me to reflect that, and also to have this sense of her, for the story, for it to be outlandish that she would be having a swayamvar. She had to be older, right? She had to be older. She has to have a few things that disqualify her from princess category, right? And also have a lived life to a degree and to a point where now she is able to both reflect on and also look forward, and have this sort of like this backstory that I don't go too much into the backstory, but I make references to the backstory, but also bring in aspects of caste and things like that, where it's at this point where you really, a whole lot of realizations start to dawn on us, and we also begin to have a reckoning with our own role in these systems of exploitation. And so she's at that point where it's not like she's solved all her problems, and has also been reflective enough um, to feel sort of beyond scrutiny herself. So she's scrutinizing herself and uh, her own privileges in the world, while also being someone that has been marginalized.
And what was the thing that you discovered about your role in the kind of the society that she lives in? And because I had my own self reflection as I was reading this. I'm curious, as you wrote this, what came out of it from you as a lesson to discover.
I mean, so many things, right? The first thing in the my present day environment, the fact that I, as a twice divorced woman who has raised a feminist son, but also is a professor, lives on a meager income, and has to work for her existence, and has taken certain risks in life, is disabled, is still struggling with with a few things. One, there's so much joy and agency, and two, there's still a sense of what next and what is to come. And I don't live for my son alone, right? Like, and I'm not saying that every other women my age do, but there's that. So so a reflection of, or some sort of contemplation or reckoning with that, but also with how much community has come through for me. How many people that I would not have encountered if I had continued on the straight and narrow, if I had continued to be safe, I would not have met these incredible people that now populate my life and enrich it, right?
Mm-hmm.
I would not be, my closest friends are queer, for instance, because they have faced estrangement, family estrangement, and have embraced joy and love in spite of that, and lived these incredible, complicated lives as good people and assholes and everything. They're a mix of everything, right? But they've also been my support system in navigating the waters of estrangement, navigating this thing of found family and chosen family. And so I've learned so much from them, and I wanted this protagonist to also have that sense of like meeting a trans woman who's the bridal dress designer, meeting a disabled Black woman, and and embodying them, or imbuing them with characteristics of goddesses, for instance, right? All of that was this reckoning with all the consciousness that exists for me from my past and from my culture, and then in my current present day reality in Seattle as a progressive person living here. The other thing I had to have a reckoning with, and this has been ongoing for the past, say, about 15 years. I had some reckoning with it while I was a journalist in India, of course, with the caste system in India.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not as it's not as honest and as disturbing and as I think important and true as that which happens when you really, really are willing to be wounded by your own actions, right? Like be or look at the legacy of this. And so it was really important for me. I was raised in a Brahmin household and with the privileges of a Brahmin child and a young woman. And even though I sort of tried to distance myself from it, I could not. I mean, there's, all the privileges that come with it in India, going to the schools, having a last name that opens doors for you, being, being seen as with a certain cachet, and having that cachet in the world. That was really important. And then do we shed that when we come to the US? No, that caste privilege continues because we have had those privileges and we move from privilege to privilege. We move from entitlement to entitlement, right? So even though we are othered here in the US, we carry certain, I carry myself into a room with a certain
Mm-hmm.
sense of entitlement that I had when I was in India. And so I worked with a journalist, author, Yashika Dutt, who's grown to be
Mm-hmm.
such a good friend. And we met her. You met her there too. I'm sure you know her, but we met when we were in New York as well. And as I was writing the story, she was a reader for me, an early reader for me. And she said, examine more how the patriarchy, how Brahminical patriarchy lands on Brahmin women rather than try and explore the point of view. I wasn't trying to necessarily do that, but I was what is my positionality in it is that of one of the people who's been complicit or has benefited or has enjoyed the privileges, and what are the wounds of the Brahminical patriarchy that fall on Brahmin women themselves, right? So similar in the US to what
Yeah.
are the white male privileges that are then given or not given or withheld from white women, right? So what is white feminism's reckoning in a similar way? What is Brahmin women's reckoning with feminism? So all of that was really important for me to put into this and to layer the story with all of that. Yeah.
Yeah, I was also raised in a Brahmin household, and I think one thing that isn't talked about enough is that it's in many instances, if you have education or privilege that you've brought from, let's say, India, it's easier for you to attain the quote unquote model minority status here in America, which then affords you other privileges that I think a lot of South Asians maybe are hesitant to talk about or to acknowledge that we stand on the shoulders of civil rights activists, right, in America that bore just as much, if not more, of a burden in achieving equality here in America. So I do think that was, like, for me, that was an interesting thing to look into with this book, was examining my privilege there.
Absolutely, right? And we could write books just about that soul privilege right here, because we're sort of benefiting from both systems.
Yeah. Yeah, and then I think that's where, I personally hope to share that benefit and kind of tear down the systemic inequality there. I feel like that's the duty that I have, that I feel tasked with.
That
Um,
makes me so happy to hear that.
yeah, I mean, I think that there's like a weight that people should carry in bringing others up the ladder, so to speak, right? And we
Yeah,
should all be shouldn't pull the
yeah,
ladder up from us when we achieve it. Is personal opinion. Um,
so
I'm
true.
I'm curious how, like, writing the scenes. You there are a couple of scenes with letters that have come from distant relatives in India, and I won't spoil them for folks who haven't read this book. But um, can you talk about whether that was researched, or was that family history, personal history? Just give us a little more insight into those letters, because those were
That was
fascinating. I loved him. Loved
I
him.
enjoyed, and you know that I would enjoy that voice. If you've read The Laughter, you know I like to get into the minds of men and write from their perspective. Um, I that was researched. It was definitely researched, but also it's that collective voice of the entitled male who is so unself-aware and writes to whom he thinks is a mentor, right? Like that cousin in India is sending letters to her, emails and letters to her, sort of like offering this as a sort of his own wisdom and advice to her, and like mentoring her into, not doing the swayamvar, and telling her about curses and about how she should live the life of a respectable older lady. And so I think to me, writing from that perspective was just super enjoyable after I had researched, what kind of, how is this man connected to Modi's India? How are these men recruiting intellectuals from the US to come and do that right wing work in India? And also what they believe is, sort of the trad wife or the return to family values, and how that does that apply in this context. So once I had his voice, I started to enjoy writing his letters, from his perspective, and sort of show that no matter where we are, like no matter how old, no matter where in the world you may have maybe and what you may have achieved, that voice will come and find you.
Yeah, yeah, and I did contrast it to the laughter, the main character in the laughter, or the narrator, and I'm just wondering, like, if you had to sit in front of, let's say, a book club for men, and with this book, what would you hope that they would glean from kind of those voices?
I
What is
mean,
something that maybe they wouldn't pick up on that women would say, ah, yes, this is so typical.
yeah, I mean, I hope they would have a lot of questions for me, right? I would have a
Hmm.
lot of questions for them. I would have questions for men in that book club to say, do you see yourself? I think a lot of men that read The Laughter said to me, oh my God, this guy, and I was just like, do you see yourself in it? No, you don't see yourself in it. Like, tell me you see parts of yourself. And so, a couple of people were honest and said, like, oh my God, I've said things like this. I had no idea. And so I think that would be great if we
Hmm.
had some self awareness. If someone could laugh and also be reflective. I mean, look at how reflective we as women are, constantly growing, self improvement, all of that. And it's not a blanket statement. Some women don't necessarily want to do that. But I think, yeah, I think a book club of Brahmin men, I mean, I would
Oh,
be a little afraid. I would be a bit afraid for my safety.
you'd have to do it virtually.
Yeah, I mean, I'd even asked some uncles of mine for access. I traveled to Bihar in order to go to go to my father's ancestral village, where I haven't been since the age of 2,
Mm.
because I didn't want to have anything to do with that place. But now at this point in my life, I felt like I was able to, I had the courage to do it, and the agency and the status in order to go back there, right? And I asked an uncle of mine and if I could go, and he said, "What is this research you're doing?" With that same voice, right? And I said, as if I'm like this little girl who's doing something as a little hobby or a painting, and I said, this is on caste and disability. And he said, "Oh, I see. Come back in a few months and I will take you." And I was like, "No, I need to go there now. And so then I asked my cousin, a woman who's taken many risks in her own life, and her daughter, and they accompanied me. And so it's like 3 of us, like driving in to this remote village late in the night in Bihar, right? Like you could just imagine that. And Bihar is such a backward state, I'm sorry to
Mhm.
say, um, but the women came to help me, and there's these cousins and uncles, and even the so-called intellectual ones didn't want to help out, or didn't want to have that examination, right? And knew that I was doing something that was problematic for them. So I would have, for that kind of a book club, I don't know how safe and comfortable I would feel, but I would love that. I would love that. Make that happen, Shachi.
I
Just
would love to make that happen. Actually, let me ask Mark Cecil, another author who I greatly admire. He's in a book club for men, so maybe I'll
nice.
float this past him.
Thanks.
You mentioned, the women that you just mentioned that brought you to the village and the ancestral home. Um, this book is filled with women building, I'm calling it sisterhood for the purposes of this grand finale. But the book starts kind of at the beginning with the protagonist um, uh, mindlessly putting a picture on Instagram that ends up going viral, and she realizes that it's actually a picture of a bell hooks book, of communion, I believe. I'm a little rusty on communion, but I do recall that it's centered around building a sisterhood, finding women who will uplift and support and provide care, and basically create a matriarchy kind of network of people, as well as um, being courageous in your own self journey. And this is feels like a lot of what this book is about. I'm wondering if you have other authors that inspire you in the same way, and did that book play any part in this beyond what you described in that scene?
Oh, absolutely. So that was a tribute to the book, to Bell Hooks's Communion, The Female Search for Love. Um, because I read it, when I started to toy with this idea of this book, a friend of mine gave me Bell Hooks's book, and actually, that friend of mine is going to come here to have a cup of tea with me this afternoon. It's
Good.
so funny that we are talking about her, and so she gave me this book, and it just fit right in. You know how, like, when you start writing something, everything sort of feeds into that, and sort of like the universe is giving you ideas and material that tell you keep going, this you're onto something. And so Bell Hooks's book was so profoundly moving and educational to me, because as you said, you gave a great précis of the book, and it's just uh, such an important book in terms of understanding the sisterhood and this sense of matriarchy. One particular thing that I really like about that book was this thing of, like, married women need to call out their men and even talk openly about uh, about the things that they are not doing in marriages, how men are failing women or failing their partners in marriage, right? In marriage or in partnerships and togetherness. And I feel like so many women don't talk about that, because you're supposed to say, "Oh, I'm happily married," right? And you don't talk about that maybe to one or two friends, but in society, I feel like that's the next level that we really need to poke at, so that we can then question this arc that one is supposed to have of sort of treading water until you're married, right? That you're, oh, why aren't you married yet? As if it's a
Mm-hmm.
given, right? Or I'm happily married. It's almost like when you say you're married, you're supposed to add the word happily in front of it. Otherwise, it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't sound complete in some way, right? What about I'm unhappily married, but I'm working on it, right?
Right.
So I think that really informed and educated me, and so many other books. I read such a lot of feminist writing. Almost everything I read sort of feeds into my bank, that feeds this feminist bank in me that comes out. And like Sarah Ahmed's book was so great for the laughter. Sarah Ahmed's book, Complaint, about women in academia. Or was it, I think maybe her previous writing, I'm trying to remember the timeline of but yeah, there's such a lot of good work that I am inspired by constantly, and I'm reading as I write. Annie Ernaux's work, while I was writing Intemperance, I was reading a lot of Annie Ernaux, Rachel Cusk, and a lot of
Mm.
the kinds of narratives in the book are informed by them as well.
I love that. Yeah, I mean, I think men could, and I don't mean this in a blanket statement, but I think adopting more of a matriarchy is better for everybody, not just women, and it centers community instead of kind of the individual. And anyway, we can go down that road and talk for
Yeah.
hours, but
I
I
mean,
love
it's
that point.
benefited my son. I mean, he would
Mm-hmm.
say that feminism has benefited him. He'll be the first one to say that, and I can see it, and it benefits me right back. The fact that he's a feminist, like, I think there's so much that I can now rest and enjoy the benefits of raising a feminist son, because
Right.
it's the conversations, it's the things that, what is he marching in the streets for? All of that is part of our collective liberation, right?
Yeah.
My dog keeps wanting to emerge into
I
this
mean, I have
space.
many questions for your dog if you'd like. I'm always happy to have a dog in a video. I think I think the world, to your point, the world is not getting softer, and so people need to, in order to move through it in some semblance of sanity, in my opinion. But I wanted to ask you, there are, and again, I'm not going to have any spoilers, but there are deities that visit this protagonist at periodic moments of the story to either help illuminate a point or move the story in a different direction or forward, or what have you. Um, I went to a reading of The Loneliness of Sonia and Sunny by Kiran Desai last year, and somebody asked her about the magical realism in that story. And I won't spoil it for anybody who hasn't read it. It's fantastic. And her response was really interesting to me, and I wanted to get your thoughts. She said, why do you think that this is magical realism? This is something that's based in my culture. Hinduism has been around for thousands of years. Why is it that the West considers anything that seems like out of sync or different to be magical realism? And I'm wondering if we can put that lens with this book and take away the label of magical realism and say, no, these things actually happened and these deities are real and they did visit.
Yeah,
I'm
I love
wondering, like,
that.
well, how do you
Yeah.
react to that, if to hear that?
Oh, I totally agree. I totally agree with Kiran, because I think one of the things is like, I didn't know. I didn't know that I'm writing magical realism. I was just like, this is what's happening with her. She just smoked some weed. Is that a goddess on the bus? And
Right.
then, who are these people? And, she's encountering all these people. They are embodying these different deities, right? And she recognizes them toward the end, but there's this consciousness that continues, right? And I think it's part of the way we think. When you're raised in, and I wouldn't just say raised Hindu, because it's such that Hindu
Sure.
culture and Hindu mythology is so pervasive in India. It's in the air, it's in our references, it's in our songs, it's in our conversations, it's in the blessings to my son. My son is an atheist, and when I say, "May Saraswati be with you," like, he says,
Mm-hmm.
"Oh my God, what are you saying?" And I just say, like, look, it's just an energy that I'm sending with you, right?
Yeah.
I'm not I'm not deeply religious myself, but how I feel like certain energies around me sometimes, and I wish for certain things from certain gods or deities sometimes, right? And so why not? Like, I do think that all of us, I mean, there are there are, I've just had a major surgery on my ankle, and the
Mm-hmm.
friend that came through for me is a Pakistani Muslim friend, and she has been my pillar of strength through the entire process. She's just been with me all through doctor's appointments, everything, right? In her, I see so many of these goddesses. And now, not to, appropriate her culture and impose mine on it, but to me, that's the energy that I'm feeling, and that's the support I'm feeling. She is a Hanuman to me. She
Mm-hmm.
is Lakshmi and Saraswati and everyone else, and Kali and Durga and all of these, all the protections of the goddess. She embodies that, right? And so many friends who show up in all these ways. So how can I not think of them as these gods and goddesses? And we say this all the time, right? Lakshmi aayi hai ghar mein, which means you've given birth to goddess Lakshmi, which is, I mean, in some ways problematic, but like,
Well,
the
yeah.
girl is only
I mean,
useful if she's bringing wealth to the family. But it's so much is so much a part of our consciousness, is so much a part of our reality and our everyday speech and everything, that why not? Why is it magical realism? And maybe these magical things are happening around us all the time, and we need them into what feels like the straitjacket of, I'm mixing my metaphors, but we try to make them seem real, and so then they're classified as magical realism.
yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I agree. I think that to me, miraculous is maybe the right word, and not. I just thought it was an interesting concept that maybe that's another thing that some people readers have to uncouple is the implicit bias as to what counts as mystical and magical and what counts as plausible and realistic. I thought that was. I hope that readers that read this book spend a little time thinking about that. I have a million more questions, but I do want to move to a bit of a lighthearted lightning round if you're game.
Sure.
To
These
kind of
these lightning rounds really terrify me, actually.
no,
I've
no,
never
no, no. These are fun. I think you're
Okay.
gonna like them, and they're all softballs.
Okay.
But before we do that, I really wanted to thank you for this discussion. I think that it's just so important to me to read books by women that are moving the conversation forward and are giving us words and beautiful prose that make us think and make us live our lives a little bit differently. And I hope that anybody that's reading Intemperance and also the laughter, frankly, because I think that's a very different gaze of a novel, and I loved it just so much. But so I just wanted to thank you for that.
Thank you.
It's great.
Thanks.
That's what
Thanks for
books
the
should
deep
do.
reading. And um, this is what writers write for, right? To see if it's landed and what else you brought to it yourself. So thank you for all of that.
Yes, I loved it, and I've told everybody about it, and it's been great, and I will get it into the
Okay.
hands of a book club for men. Just you watch. Uh, so okay, I have a couple of questions. In one scene of this book of Intemperance, the main character goes to meet her new wedding planner, and they go for ice cream, and sounds amazing. The flavor that's described is decadent and rich, and I'm wondering what's your go-to ice cream order?
That's the one.
That
Is that
is?
California Cabin? Is that the one she orders, right?
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah.
oh my God!
And
I
there's
see. I
another
didn't know it
one.
existed.
Yeah, I think it's a Seattle ice cream company. It's called Frankie and Joe's,
Mm.
and that one is incredible. There's also a turmeric based ice cream, and I always say turmeric is good for me. This ice cream is
Yeah, it's
good for me.
healthy.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
It's basically a vegetable, right?
Right. Yeah.
Right. I have a soft spot for mango flavored ice cream, and I also there's a ice cream shop in New York City called Malai, and every now and then they have a Ras Malai ice cream cake, and it is fantastic. I love it.
Wow.
So if you had a swayamvar for publishers to show up at the finish of your next book, forget about your contract for a minute. What is a feat of strength you'd love to for them to take on?
Oh my gosh. Okay, I would need them to pay me $1 million.
Okay,
That's
done.
a rich prince always helps, right? And also to tell me what beauty they see in my story.
Mm, I love that.
Yeah,
Those are
that's
your
their feat.
publishers. If you're listening, get that ready. Get that $1 million check. Um, the protagonist also takes a bit of a staycation on a houseboat in this story, and I'm wondering where is your favorite place to write?
Oh, that's lovely. It's actually right here on my couch now. I used to love to write in coffee shops, and so I alternate between the two. I meet my friends for coffee and we write together, or I sit here on my fuchsia pink couch, which has a chaise, and I gaze out onto Lake Union. So I'm not in a houseboat, but in whatever comes close enough to be on land in a houseboat. So I look out onto the lake and I write on my living room.
I love that. And the water brings you prose. That's in my head.
Yes.
That's how water washes ashore, right? What is the last book that made your heart sing that you've read?
Oh my gosh, that made my heart sing. I've been mostly reading books that make my heart sink.
Hmm.
So lately, my gosh, this is going to be difficult. I'll have to get back to you on this. Well, I would say The Loneliness of Sonia and Sunny. It
Yeah.
was both heartbreaking, but it also had this such a beauty to it that I just felt both transported. I felt heartbroken. I felt like I was deeply lost in a story. So I would say that, yeah,
Yeah. I loved that book.
yeah.
I love the idea of spending almost a lifetime with characters. It's very
Mhm.
satisfying as a reader. And then my last question is, can you tell us what you're working on next?
Oh, I'm working on something. So
Okay. Okay. Okay.
nothing very, very concrete yet.
Okay. Well, we look forward to hearing it when it's ready to be heard.
But it's also my debut novel, Foreign,
Hmm.
is now going to be published by Harper Via. It's coming out in the fall. So
Ooh,
yes, so
amazing.
that's the U.S. audience, U.S. readers will be able to get hold of that in
Okay.
this
Looks like
country.
I'm adding that to my pre-order list right now. So I'm
Awesome.
excited. Well,
Thank
Sonora,
you.
thank you so much for joining me today. I really enjoyed our chat, and I hope everyone else did.
Lovely. This is so good. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care, everyone.